All right, welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're going to be tackling Marvel's The Defenders.
Okay.
You know that 2017 miniseries where they brought Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist together
Right.
to fight the Hand?
Yeah.
Those ninjas that, were always lurking around in the shadows and all those other shows. We've got reviews and behind-the-scenes stuff and even a plot summary to kind of guide us through this thing.
Cool.
And I think our mission here is to figure out just how this ambitious crossover even attempted to blend like 4 very different superhero styles into one cohesive narrative.
Yeah, it was a pretty interesting proposition.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't just like throwing all these heroes together for a few fight scenes or something like that,
Right.
It was like they really tried to build on all the different tones and visual styles that those solo series already had.
Yeah.
So, like, imagine trying to mix gritty noir with mystical martial arts while you're juggling all these established character arcs.
Right, exactly.
This is definitely a risky thing to do.
For sure. And I noticed too, like right off the bat, the show takes its time getting started.
Yeah.
The first few episodes are really about reestablishing each character and their own individual stories,
Okay.
which I think if you were a hardcore fan, you would probably appreciate that
Sure.
because it's a deeper dive into each character.
Right.
But if you're like someone who just wanted to see them team up right away,
Yeah.
I imagine those first few episodes would feel pretty slow.
Yeah. No, I can see that.
What do you think about that?
Well, I think you've hit on like a really common problem that all these ensemble shows have.
Mm-hmm.
It's this balance between like how do we show each character
Mm-hmm.
and let them develop
Yeah,
and also move the shared plot forward at the same time.
right.
It's like walking a tightrope.
For sure.
And for the Defenders, it seems like they really wanted to make sure we understood everyone before their paths crossed.
Yeah.
Like we had to revisit those separate worlds first.
Okay.
So, for some viewers that might feel repetitive.
Yeah, especially if they already know these characters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it might be comforting for
I
others
see what you mean.
who haven't seen those individual shows.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
It's a tricky balance.
And then you've got this whole other thing that's going on, which is the tonal juggling act.
Uh-huh.
We're talking about dark noir for Jessica Jones.
Okay.
That whole funk and hip hop vibe from Luke Cage.
Right.
Daredevil with, the whole brooding Catholicism thing.
Yeah.
And then, Danny Rand being Danny Rand.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing.
Right.
Yeah, that's when it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because to blend all those different tones together and have it actually work, it's like a high wire act.
Yeah.
How do you create a world where like gritty realism and like mystical martial arts can exist together?
Right.
Does that even work?
Yeah.
I mean, some reviews I read thought it was jarring.
Really?
Yeah. They even said that the show's use of color was an example of this.
Oh, wow.
Like it was too much red for Daredevil, yellow for Luke Cage. Like they were using color as this constant reminder of who was who.
Yeah, I can see how that would be a little bit on the nose. And it makes you think visual storytelling can really backfire sometimes. If those color palettes are just too obvious, they can pull you out of the story instead of making you feel like you're part of it.
Right, exactly.
It's got to be subtle.
It's all about balance.
Yeah.
Like filmmakers have all these tools, to get tone and emotion and all that stuff across.
Yeah.
When it's subtle, it's great.
Right.
But when it's too much, it just feels like you're being hit over the head with a sign,
Yeah, I hear ya.
like a big neon sign.
Speaking of hit over the head, there's been a lot of talk about Sigourney Weaver's character, Alexandra.
Oh, yeah.
She's the leader of the Hand.
Right.
But a lot of reviewers thought that she wasn't as interesting as some of the villains from those other shows,
Interesting.
which makes you think, like, what actually makes a really great villain?
That's the question, isn't it? I mean, is it just being powerful?
Mm.
Or having like a super complex backstory?
Yeah.
Or is there something else?
What do you think?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
Well, some reviewers compared her to villains like Kingpin from Daredevil
Yeah.
and Kilgrave from Jessica Jones.
Right.
Those characters were really messed up, but they were also strangely charismatic.
Yeah.
You almost understood them,
Right.
even when they were doing really horrible things.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that.
So what do you think about that?
Well, I think they're really good villains. They challenge the heroes,
Okay.
but not just physically.
Yeah.
It's like their ideas and their emotions too.
Oh, interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not good versus evil.
Yeah.
It's like two different ways of looking at the world.
Right.
It makes you think.
That's a good point.
Makes you question things.
Yeah.
It's not just like, oh, that guy's bad.
Right. Exactly.
It's more complicated than that.
It's more nuanced.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's not all about Alexandra, though.
No.
No. The Hand, they also bring back Elektra.
Oh, wow.
Daredevil's old flame turned into a brainwashed assassin.
Okay.
Talk about throwing gas on a fire.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a complicated relationship to begin with.
Right.
And now she's back.
Yeah, that's intense.
So what do you think about that?
Well, bringing back Elektra like that,
Yeah.
it gives Daredevil something really personal to fight for, but it also brings up questions like free will.
Right.
I mean, she's a weapon for the Hand.
Yeah.
But is there any part of her that still remembers Matt Murdock?
That's a really good question.
You know what I mean?
I do, yeah.
Like, is she really gone, or is there still something there?
Yeah, that adds like another whole level to the bad guys.
For sure.
It's not just that they're evil. It's that there might be something redeemable about them.
Right.
But anyway, you know what I think is so fun about the Defenders?
What's that?
It's like all these heroes who are so used to working alone, they're suddenly forced to be on a team.
Uh-huh.
And one of the reviews said it was a riot to see them all clash.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Heck, bet.
It must have been hilarious.
Yeah, Cody.
Because they all have their own ways of doing things.
Yeah.
They all have their own philosophies. They all have their own baggage.
Right.
I mean, think about it, like Danny Rand's naivety versus Luke Cage's like street smarts.
Yeah.
And then Jessica Jones is so cynical. And Matt Murdock's got this whole internal struggle going on.
Right.
But it's like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
But also like really entertaining.
Oh, absolutely.
It's that contrast that makes it so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's funny because, like, in one of the sources, it says that Danny wants to use his iron fist on some small-time crooks.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And Luke Cage is just like, dude, you're serious?
Yo, man, I got to see that.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, you know, that kind of dynamic is really important for a show like this because it's the disagreements that make them learn from each other.
Okay.
And it makes their victories feel more earned.
Yeah.
Because they had to work for it.
Yeah, for sure.
They had to overcome their differences.
Right, exactly.
To get there.
Which makes you think, like, would this team even work if they all got along perfectly?
That's a good point.
Right. Where's the fun in that?
Exactly.
It's those differences that make it so compelling to watch.
Yeah, for sure.
So we've talked about pacing and tone and the villains and how the team works together.
Right.
But there's one more thing we need to talk about.
What's that?
The bigger picture.
Okay.
Because this wasn't just a standalone story.
Right.
It was like the culmination of all these stories that had been building across multiple shows.
Yeah.
And it was a big moment for the Marvel Cinematic Universe because it showed how all these smaller stories could connect to a bigger narrative.
Yeah. That's a good point.
It's like saying, hey, even the street-level heroes have a part to play in the grand scheme of things.
Exactly.
Right.
It's like they took what the Avengers did on like a global scale and brought it down to the streets of New York.
Right.
Like a different perspective on the same world.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, it was ambitious.
Yeah, for sure.
And it kind of makes you think about the future of these characters.
Right.
And how they fit into this whole big universe.
Yeah.
It's exciting to think about.
Yeah. I can't wait to see what they do next.
Me too. It's really interesting how they handled those ties to all those other shows.
Yeah.
It's tricky.
Yeah.
You want to give those hardcore fans something, you know, like those aha moments without confusing the people who are just seeing these characters for the first time.
Yeah, that's true.
And you know what's funny?
What's that?
The Defenders actually has some criticism of Danny Rand in it.
Really?
Yeah, from his own show.
Oh, wow.
Luke Cage straight up calls him out on some of his, you know.
Less than stellar moments.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's like they're acknowledging the fan feedback.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we hear you. We know he could be a lot sometimes.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought it was a nice touch.
It's like they're in on the joke.
Exactly.
It's like a little wink to the audience.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not just about making fun of Danny.
Right.
The sources also mention how, like, their past traumas and experiences all come into play.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like, Jessica Jones is still dealing with all the stuff from Kilgrave.
Of course.
So
those scars are important.
Yeah.
Because it reminds us that these are real people, you know? Even if they have superpowers, they still go through stuff.
Yeah.
And it makes you care about them more.
It does.
You know, when they have those moments of camaraderie?
Yeah.
It feels earned.
It does.
Because they've been through so much together.
Yeah, and they understand each other.
Right.
In a way that most people never could. They might fight and argue, but they always have each other's backs.
That's true.
It's like this shared understanding that brings them together, even though they're so different.
And that shared history is what makes the Defenders more than just some random team up.
Okay.
You know, it's like all their individual journeys.
Right.
They're all coming together.
Yeah, like converging.
Exactly.
And it gives the whole miniseries more weight.
Yeah, for sure.
So speaking of converging,
okay,
what does all of this mean for these characters? Like, where do they go from here?
Yeah.
Do the Defenders tie everything up neatly?
I wouldn't say it ties up every loose end.
Okay.
They do deal with the hand, you know?
Yeah.
But you get the feeling that this isn't the end of the story.
Oh, interesting.
Like, there's still more to come.
Okay, so it leaves you wanting more.
Yeah, I'd say so.
That's good.
Yeah. It's a good place to leave it.
It is.
Leaves you wanting more.
So, you know, we can't really talk about the Defenders without talking about its legacy.
Okay.
I mean, it came out in 2017.
Right.
That was like peak superhero stuff.
Yeah, everything was superheroes back then.
Everything.
It was crazy.
But this show,
Yeah.
it tried to do something different.
Yeah, it did.
What do you think it was trying to do?
Well, it tried to tell a more grounded story
Okay.
with real characters,
Mm-hmm.
but still within that big superhero world.
Okay.
You know, it wasn't about saving the universe or anything like that.
Right.
It was about protecting their city from a real threat.
I see what you mean.
It was like the street-level version of what the Avengers were doing.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it was more intimate,
Okay.
more personal.
Yeah.
It was about their everyday struggles,
Mhm,
not just the big fights.
And one review actually used the phrase,
Oh, yeah.
urban atmosphere with blaxploitation roots,
Wow.
when talking about Luke Cage.
Okay.
Which is interesting because these shows weren't afraid to deal with real issues. It's true, like race and class and gender.
Yeah, they had something to say about the world.
Which is awesome.
It is.
It's not just mindless action.
Right.
There's something deeper going on.
For sure.
But, you know,
Yeah.
just because those other shows were successful doesn't mean that The Defenders was automatically going to be.
That's true.
And some reviewers felt like it didn't quite capture that same magic.
Yeah, I could see that.
It's tough to blend all those different styles.
Yeah, it's a gamble.
It is.
And sometimes it doesn't pay off.
Right.
But you have to admire the ambition.
Yeah.
Even if it wasn't perfect.
Yeah, for sure.
It was still a really interesting experiment.
It was.
And it paved the way for other shows like it.
So we talked about how it connects to those other shows.
Right.
And the legacy of The Defenders, and some of its flaws. But I want to circle back to the villains for a second.
Okay.
We talked about Sigourney Weaver as Alexandra and the return of Elektra.
Right.
But let's dig a little deeper.
Okay.
Do they really live up to the villains from those other shows?
That's a tough question.
It is a tough question.
I mean, one review said that Alexandra wasn't as deep as someone like Kingpin or Kilgrave.
Interesting.
Like she was elegant and menacing and all that,
Yeah,
but not as psychologically complex,
I can see that.
you know?
Yeah, and those other villains, they had these really strong motivations and backstories that made them more than just bad guys.
Yeah.
It seems like with Alexandra,
Yeah.
they tried to make up for that by keeping her mysterious.
Oh.
Like, we never really know why she's doing what she's doing.
Do you think that worked?
I don't know. Sometimes that works.
Yeah.
But in this case, maybe it would have been better to give us a little more insight
Okay.
into her character.
Yeah.
Like, why is she doing this?
I see what you mean.
It's like the difference between being afraid of a monster in the dark versus being afraid of a monster that you kind of understand. Like, you can empathize with them a little bit.
That makes him scarier
Yeah.
because it's more real.
Right.
It's closer to home.
So if Alexandra is the brains of the hand,
Okay.
then Elektra is the muscle.
Yeah.
She's back from the dead.
Uh-huh.
But she's not the same person she used to be.
So how did they use her in the show?
Well, on the one hand, she's this super dangerous assassin.
Okay.
She's not afraid to kill.
Right.
But then there's this whole emotional connection to Daredevil, which makes things really complicated.
Yeah. Because you see those moments where Matt Murdock sees the woman he used to love,
Right.
but she's not really there anymore.
It's like she's trapped inside this assassin's body.
That's a good way to put it.
And then there's that whole black sky thing.
Oh, yeah. What was that all about?
Oh, right.
They kept saying it.
Yeah.
But they never explained it.
And why is she so important to the hand? If you haven't been watching all the other shows, they're probably totally lost.
For sure.
It's like they just assumed we knew.
Right.
But even without all the answers, Elektra definitely adds a lot of danger to the story.
Oh, yeah.
You never know what she's going to do.
Right.
Are those moments of her old self real?
Yeah.
Or is she just messing with Matt?
It keeps you guessing.
Yeah, it does.
That's what makes her so interesting.
Exactly.
She's a wild card.
She is.
You never know what's going to happen next.
And speaking of unpredictable, I thought it was interesting how they handled the team's formation.
Yeah.
It wasn't like this big, hey, let's all team up moment.
Right.
There was a lot of reluctance and clashing personality.
So what finally convinced them to work together?
That's a good question.
Yeah. Why did they become the Defenders?
I think it was the hand.
Okay.
They might not have agreed on everything, but they all knew that the hand was dangerous.
Right.
It was like the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
I get that.
But it was more than that, too. I think they started to realize that they were stronger together, that they could actually accomplish something as a team.
That's cool.
Yeah. And that realization, that sense of unity is what leads to that final showdown.
Exactly. It's like they finally put aside their own stuff and come together as a team.
To face the hand.
To save the city.
Exactly.
It's a classic superhero moment.
It is.
But it works.
It does.
Because we've seen them struggle to get to this point.
Right.
So it feels earned.
It does.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's satisfying.
It is.
Because we see why they need to be a team.
Okay, so before we jump into that final showdown, let's take a quick pause.
Okay.
Gather our thoughts.
Sounds good.
And we'll be back soon to break down the epic conclusion of Marvel's The Defenders.
I can't wait.
All right, we're back and ready to dive into the final part of Marvel's The Defenders. Last we left off, the team was finally united against the hand.
Right.
Which sets the stage for this big showdown in New York City.
Yeah.
And it all goes down at Midland Circle.
Midland Circle.
Yeah.
That's interesting because they've been hinting at that place.
Right.
In a bunch of the other shows.
Like Daredevil.
Yeah, Daredevil.
Jessica Jones. Even Luke Cage.
Wow.
They've always been there.
Lurking in the shadows.
Yeah, like this shadowy corporation.
Yeah.
And it's really cool how they use it to tie everything together.
Yeah, it really shows how connected all these stories are.
Like all those seemingly isolated events.
Right.
We're actually part of the Hand's plan.
It's like a big conspiracy.
It is.
And it's not just like some corporate scheme.
Right.
This is like some serious mystical stuff.
Yeah, they're up to something big.
Yeah. The sources mention some ancient ritual.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that they're trying to do.
Okay.
And apparently it needs Danny Rand.
The Iron Fist.
Yeah.
To work?
It's pretty crazy.
It is crazy.
Because remember how Danny wanted to destroy the hand?
Yeah, he was so focused on that.
Right. And now they've turned the tables.
Yeah.
And they need him.
That's a good twist.
Yeah. It's a good way to raise the stakes.
So what does that mean for the other defenders?
Well, now they have to protect Danny.
Yeah.
Not just from the hand, but from himself.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's like a battle on two fronts.
Yeah.
You're fighting the enemy.
Right.
But you're also trying to help your friend.
Who's been brainwashed.
Yeah, exactly.
That's tough.
And don't forget
that
they're all dealing with their own stuff, too.
Right. They've got their own baggage.
Yeah, like one of the reviews mentioned Matt Murdock.
Daredevil.
Yeah.
What about him?
It said he was lost.
Oh, wow.
After everything that happened in his show.
Yeah, especially with Elektra.
Yeah, that was rough.
That was a tough one.
So he's trying to move on.
Right.
Focus on being a lawyer. But then all this happens.
And it pulls him right back in.
Yeah, he can't escape it.
It's like, it's his destiny.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
It's like he's meant to be Daredevil.
Whether he likes it or not.
Exactly.
And that whole idea of destiny.
Yeah.
It's a big part of this final act.
Okay. How so?
Well, they all have to make these really tough choices.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like they have to sacrifice things.
What kind of things?
Their own desires.
Okay.
Their own well-being.
Wow.
For the greater good.
That's heavy.
It is.
It's like they're putting everything on the line.
And one of the sources even mentioned that there are some major losses.
Oh, no.
Yeah, in that final battle.
Oh,
yeah. Apparently, Stick doesn't make it.
Stick?
Daredevil's mentor.
Oh, wow.
He dies.
That's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
For Daredevil.
Yeah.
And for the viewers who've been watching all this time.
It shows you how high the stakes are.
Yeah, it's not a game anymore.
This is serious stuff.
It's life or death.
Exactly.
And Stick's death It's like a reminder
Okay.
that even for superheroes, actions have consequences.
They do.
It's not all fun and games.
No.
There's real danger
For sure.
and real loss.
Right. But it's not all doom and gloom.
No.
No, the sources also talk about these really epic moments
Okay, like what?
in that final battle.
Uh-huh.
Like, we've got Daredevil fighting Elektra, Luke Cage using his strength to take down all these ninjas,
Yeah.
and Jessica Jones outsmarting everyone.
It's cool.
Yeah, it's like all their skills from all those other shows are coming together.
It's like a culmination of everything we've seen so far.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
It is awesome.
And it's not just the Defenders.
No.
No. Colleen Wing and Misty Knight are there too.
Oh, yeah, they're awesome.
They are.
What are they up to?
They don't have superpowers,
Right.
but they're still super important.
Okay.
They're brave and determined.
And they prove that
Yeah.
you don't need superpowers to be a hero. Exactly.
You just got to do what's right.
Even when it's hard.
Even when it's scary.
And in the end,
Yeah.
it's that shared purpose,
Yeah.
that belief in doing the right thing that allows the Defenders to win.
They might not agree on everything,
Yeah.
but they find a way to work together.
And save the day.
Yeah.
It's a classic superhero story.
It is.
But it still works.
It does.
Because it's about more than just superpowers.
Okay, so after all that chaos,
Yeah.
all those battles,
Mm-hmm.
all the loss,
What's the takeaway?
what's the message?
Well, I think it's about collaboration.
Okay.
You know, finding common ground.
Right.
Even when you disagree.
Yeah.
And it's about the human spirit.
Like never giving up,
Exactly.
even when things are tough.
Even when it seems like all hope is lost.
It's inspiring.
It is.
It makes you think.
And it reminds us
Yeah.
that we can do amazing things.
When we work together.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a message that goes beyond superheroes.
Mhm. It's
Yeah.
about all of us.
It's about the world.
Yeah. I think that brings us to the end of our deep dive
Okay.
into Marvel's The Defenders.
It was a good one.
It was. It was fun.
Yeah, I learned a lot.
Yeah, me too.
It's a fascinating show.
It is.
A lot to think about.
Yeah, we explored its premise and its strengths and its weaknesses and its place in the MCU.
It's a unique show
Yeah, for sure.
with a lot to offer.
It does.
And I think we saw how these heroes,
Yeah.
even with all their flaws,
Right.
can do amazing things.
And they put their minds to it.
Exactly.
So we hope you enjoyed this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Yeah. And until next time,
Yeah,
keep exploring.
keep diving deep.
And we'll see you on the next deep dive.
Sounds good.